Hey guys, Matthew here. In this video I'm going to show you how to place point lights to represent the light coming out of these lamps here. Before we start that, I just want to point out that I've added more portal lights to my scene, one for this window here, and there's a few windows behind me. It's not completely necessary, but I'm a little bit pedantic. So anyway, to add a point light is extremely easy. We go to V-Ray, we go to V-Ray lights, and then we choose point light. So I'm going to move my camera around, rotate, and I'm going to place it where this light bulb is, and then I'm going to delete the light bulb because I'm not going to be looking into it in this particular context. If you're really kind of pedantic on that front and you want to add a lot more time to your computing, then you could put it inside the light bulb and make the light bulb glass and so on and so forth. But for our purposes, usually it's probably better to just remove the light bulb if you're not going to actually see it. So now I can go back to my viewport, set view, save view, and I can give this a render. So you'll see that it pops up in the light list, and if I type render, we don't need this to finish. You'll notice it's not really affecting the scene. Now, if I make this something like 20,000, and let's make it a weird color, let's make it hot pink, and we press render again, and we're back, and you'll notice that at about 20,000 the pink begins to actually affect the scene. Now this is not overly surprising, right? The sun is an extremely bright thing, and you know, in the middle of the day when you turn a light on, it doesn't affect the interior lighting setup that much. So 20,000 is actually an insanely high number for it to even be competing in this way. So one thing becomes really evident though, is that we get this very harsh line here at the edge of where the point light can actually see the wall. So if I were to wash that out a bit, I can actually use this shadow radius. I can bump it up all the way to 10, for example, and give that a render. And we're back, and you'll notice that it cleans up that edge a lot. And maybe not in the most accurate way possible, but if we scale it down a bit, more down to 2, give that another go, and we're back, and you'll notice that it does the same thing, but it's a lot less pronounced on the wall here, so it gives you a more accurate effect the further you go down there. But nevertheless, the problem is that the outside world is far too bright for this light to be accurate. So I'm going to bump it back down to 30, and then I'm going to change the time of day using the sun command, and instead of it being somewhere around midday, using the sun command, there we go, I'm going to push it to something like twilight. There we go, we're getting that blue color, and then I'm just going to give this another render. And we're back. And you'll notice that I've had a couple of experiments looking at different exposure values and different light values, and if we go all the way to night, we're only being lit by this one light, so that's kind of a creepy but accurate result. And if there's a little bit of light, we're getting lit by this one light, but also all this stuff from the outside, so the light's not extraordinarily effective in that instance. So that's what we've got there. So now, if we were wanting to actually do an actual night shot, we might do something along the lines of actually going to our lights, going to our RHINO document sun, turning it off, going to our settings tab, going to our environment, unticking this box so we use the basics of black, and then we also might want to turn off our lights here or delete them one by one, in order to speed up the render a bit. So there we go. I'm going to just give this a quick render, and you'll notice that we get back to the similar kind of nighttime shot that we had before. So I'm going to let this finish, and I'll be back in 1 second. Hey, and I'm back. And I've done a fair few things to the file that I was run through. So remembering that the fundamental kind of equation we're doing is we're balancing the outside light, the exposure value, and the actual interior lighting intensity. So I've added another 2 lights to get more light into the scene, and I've increased their intensity to 200. I mean, like, that's not a... There's no mathematical reason I chose 200, I was just playing around, and I quite like that. And you'll notice that up here is dark, the hallway is dark, and outside is completely black, which is kind of expected if those were the only 3 lights lighting the scene. Something you might do is add like a rectangular light on this side here, so effectively the same thing as a portal light, but with the portal setting turned off, kind of flooding some light in on the side, so it kind of fills the scene with more light for you. I've also deleted all the portal lights because they actually do add to render time, even if they're not actually really doing anything. And I've turned off the RHINO document sun by unticking this box here. If we go to the settings, you'll notice that I've dropped the exposure to something closer to 4, and I've turned off the environment skyline. So that's what I did to pretty much produce this. And I'm not saying this is perfect, but this is a pretty good representation of how you'd go about creating a scene that's kind of at nightish with a whole series of these kind of like manually lit kind of lights within the entirety of the scene, which is a fairly time-consuming comparison to just dropping a portal light in and using the sun and sky setup. You'll also notice that I made things not absurdly pink like it was before, something a little bit more accurate. So that's all for this video, and in the next one we'll start looking at materials.